Welcome back, everyone. Today we got the Echo 590. This is the one in the buyer beware video, and we had to swap on a used 620 cylinder. Finally got a chance to test out the before and after the muffler mod and timing key, and we even had to swap out the fuel nozzle inside the carb. So stick around, we'll go over all that along with some full porting and dyno runs. Alright, so we got the 620 cylinder and piston swapped over onto this. Now this 620 cylinder, it did have a little bit of port work done. They opened up the exhaust and they fiddled with the lowers a little bit. Doesn't appear to make much of a difference, but it was done to it. So, we got the muffler off. Here's a factory deflector. You can see factory's two-piece. Has larger upper and a much more restrictive, smaller lower. So with this modification, you unbolt the factory one, and this is the replacement. Nice, large, wide open. Alright, so with the deflector off of here, goes like so. Unbolt it. Just 2 1/4-inch holes. And if you look just right, you can see right through the port. Now nothing's stopping you from going all wild, opening this right up. But if you do that, they get awful loud, and they kind of have a crackle. So if you want loud and crackly, hog that out. If you want to get real extravagant, you can remove everything in there. There's a baffle tube, baffle plate. Let's see if we can see. Yeah, you can see the baffle plate there. There's the tube that runs up. You can see our holes we added. Got all that nice and deburred. You don't want any boogers. Same thing. Blow everything out good. Wash it out. Rinse it out. Now you still can retain your screen, but for this test, we're not going to bother. We'll bolt this on. These deflectors are definitely a simple, easy bolt on. 4 bolts off, 4 bolts back on. Add 2 holes in between. Much more wide open. That'll really flow now. We also swapped out the timing key. The key that Matt offers is 6-degree advanced. Pop the flywheel off, swap in the new key, rotate your flywheel, tighten it back down. There you go. You got 6 degrees advanced ignition. That'll put the 590 coil very, very, very close to the curve that the 620 coil runs. They're about 8 degrees different, but 6 is a good happy medium. Now it's still, 590 coil is still limited. 590 carb is still a smaller Venturi. But they do alright. Like I said, if you can get a cheap one that's not scored up, that you don't have to put a piston cylinder on right away. Advancing the timing, opening up the muffler, ought to be a good bang for the buck. So we'll get this one. Let's see if it still has fuel. Nope. Get this one fueled up, and we'll get on the dyno. I realize not everybody can do the porting, or not everybody wants to. But a bolt-on muffler mod and a little timing advance like that, we'll see what kind of power these make. I have a feeling it'll be a pretty decent bump in power. Doesn't sound too bad. See, still clears the brake and everything. Plenty of room there. Alright, we'll get this put on the dyno and see how much the muffler mod and timing advance help out. Alright, so we got this fresh off the dyno. Like I said, it has a nice, healthy exhaust note to it now. Not too crazy. Definitely more than stock. I forgot to show, so we'll look at it now. Here's the piston out of the old one. So the ring is still free. It did run. It would run. An ultimate low budget, worst case scenario, you could clean all this up, put it back into service. You can see some pretty good transfer in the cylinder there. Same thing, that would probably clean up as well. Alright, so this is cooled down enough. We can start tearing it down and work on the porting. But I just wanted to go over what we got so far. This line down here, that's the stock run. This line here is our baseline with the lightly ported 620 piston cylinder. And the top line was after our muffler mod and timing advance. You can see the distance between these two, 4.24 to 5.24, and the power shifted a bit higher up. That's to be expected. But that's about 23-24%, which is real close to which I believe is real close to what Echo says the difference between the 590 and 620 is. And we went from 5.24 to 5.83 horse after the muffler mod and timing advance, which works out to about 11.5%. So that's a pretty healthy bump. And like I said, sadly, I wish we could have done it, but I definitely think it would have helped the 590 cylinder more. But I just wanted to show everybody what we got so far. Now we'll get to our teardown. Now I don't know if it's just because I've done a handful of them. Let's drain this gas tank first. Nobody likes gas to the face first thing in the morning. Alright, now we can tear it down. Now there is also a washer and O-ring kit that we'll install once we're putting it all back together. Goes over here, O-ring over it, over the stud, over the spout, just to help seal it up better. And Gearhead also offers that filter kit. Another option is the Redbeard filter, the foam oil element. But I do really enjoy this chassis here. Super simple, easy to work on. Maybe it's just because I've done a bunch of them. Now I did notice at my elevation, I'm at about 950 feet. That with just a muffler mod like that, we had plenty of adjustment on the carburetor. It wasn't crazy rich. That can be a problem with these. So after porting, if we can't get it to lean out where it needs to be, just under that rev limiter, then we'll swap out the nozzle in the carburetor. Some people put JB weld on it, but I'd rather just swap it right out. Alright, and this 620 cylinder was installed with no base gasket. So that makes a little bit of difference there too. Push the intake boot through, and we can remove the cylinder now. We'll get the degree wheel mounted up. Intake port closing, 0. All the way past top dead center, back down. Intake port closing, 157. Now, halfway between half of 157, 78.5. So we bring it back up to the top, 78.5. Right there. And we 0 it. Alright, so that is true, top dead center. Alright, doesn't look like it's raised too awful much. I'm getting 103.8. Normally stock, they're real close to 105. Let me see where the transfers are. Alright, so we got 125 on the transfers. We'll call it 104 on the exhaust. That's with no base gasket on the 620 cylinder. So it's not crazy far. Normally they're like 105 on the exhaust, 125, 127 on the transfers, in that range. So it's not too awful far, but it does have some port work done. You can see we'll clean that up. It was opened all the way up. It's not going to hurt anything, but we'll definitely try and tune it up a little bit. Let me get a squish check on this. Okay. Grab our calipers and check. Let's see. Getting about 27. Double check both sides. 27. Alright, it's all set up. We're going to take 5 thousandths off the base. And we're going to take 30 thousandths off the extension here. So 5 off the base, 30 off the extension. That's to make up for the gasket that's no longer there. There's our 5. Give it a little bit of undercut here. Back it off just so. We'll check this undercut with a straight edge. I just used the square corner of a straight edge like this, just to make sure that we did get it undercut. So everything looks good there. Sometimes if you don't get it undercut there, it will bottom out on the cases. Said 30 thousandths off the extension, just so these don't bottom out in the case. Now if you're building one of these yourself, that 5 thousandths, is it really worth taking off? Probably not, but this base looked like it was sanded on. Wanted to make sure it was nice and true. And 10. 25. And there's our 30. This is just a plastic mandrel that's turned to fit nice and snug. I put them in, and I'll run my indicator on the flange just to make sure everything runs true to begin with. Get them lined up. Well, we got a nice finish there, a little bit undercut. Everything's all trued up. Alright, so we'll get this cylinder all laid out. Now, since these pistons have a slight taper, slight dome on them, it's actually more of a taper, but we'll call it a dome for this discussion. I'm going to set the ports at 105, 123. But from what I found, it'll actually be about 2 degrees higher because of that dome. So, it should land at 103, 121 when we're done. And the intake still be 79. So we'll get this. I'll be able to do a little bit of widening. So if you have both the 620 and the 590, what kind of differences do you guys feel actually using them? Or is there anybody that bought one, wish they bought the other? Now if you're porting, 620 has some better features for sure. The larger carb, the unlimited coil is nice, a little bit more aggressive ignition. But the 590 wakes up a lot better, so in the end it feels a lot stronger, even with the stock carb. Alright, so we cut the base. Tried to clean up these lowers a little bit. Got rid of the knife edges. Raised the uppers. Widened the exhaust. Then got all the carbon cleaned up. Same thing with the piston. So we'll put some oil in there. Get a little bit of oil in there. This one's set at 79 intake, 103 exhaust, 121 on the transfers. Well, these definitely make for a fun build. Put the decount back in. There we go. Alright, now we'll go over this last kit. It is air filter O-ring kit. Comes with this laser cut metal piece. Goes over like so to give a nice full support for this O-ring to actually clamp against. And we have an O-ring here to seal that. And we slide this on like so. And one more O-ring to seal that. Now that set up there will seal off the inlet, the threaded rod on both sides. So in theory, that should seal all of the areas. But that's another kit that Gearhead offers. Said I'll drop a link to the webpage. Alright, now we'll get it fueled up, fired up. Alright, you can hear it there. That's with the high side all the way in. Let me double check. Yep, that's with the high needle all the way in. You can still hear it was really strong 4-stroking at about 12.5. It almost would rev up to 12.5. but between 12 and 12.5, just super rich still. So we do have to pull this carb. Alright, here's the carb. HDA 268A. You take these 4 screws out of the bottom, diaphragm side. Just like so. Pull that piece off. Carefully remove the gasket and diaphragm. Make sure to note which way it goes. Let the fuel drip out. What we have, this nozzle here, that little hole, that's the one we're swapping out. That little hole is a bypass hole, which they're not supposed to let them lean out too much to overfuel or anything, to where they're supposed to not be able to burn up. But that's not the case. So what we need to do, set it up on a rag, get some cushion. And here's the one we're switching it out for. That's the Walboro part number right there. Just a little brass nozzle. Nice thing about these ones, has the band for fuel to flow all the way around. So once you get it set up, get it set on your rag. Take your handy dandy spring loaded center punch. Put it right in the center of that. It's a good idea when you're driving this through to have the choke set. That way it has some room. Alright, there we go. We got some movement. You just want to be careful not to damage the bore. You can see that's why I said have the choke closed. Because as it's going through, it'll hit the choke blade. So if you have it closed, it could pop right through. 1 or 2 more thumps and it'll probably be right out. Alright, here's 2 of them. See, that hole's pretty mangled up. The one that looks like it has a hole on the right side, that's the factory one. And the new one's the brass one on the left. I hit you. Sorry. You can see that's the factory feed hole. And it has to line up just right on the echo carb. Or this brass one, where you can see this brass one has the machine band. So it can go pretty much any way, but it's probably not a bad idea to line up the feed hole. That's the feed hole right in there in the carb. So like I said, if you line that up with the one that's in your brass. Now these do have a check valve in the nozzle, so you want to be careful not to blow in it or do anything like that. Alright, and then you just drive it in, about the same length that it was. Put everything back together. That's all there is to it. Like I said, those can be a little tricky. You just want to be careful not to damage the bore that's going in, because if you gouge that up, you might as well plan on buying a new carb. Alright, here we have the Echo crankcase. So I was talking about. Same exact thing. This is a 620 case, same as a 590. 13mm flywheel nut. It's a flange nut, regular threads. Now what I like to do, back the nut off to where it's just flush with the end of the crank. And there's a few different ways to do these. Everybody's entitled their own way. You can put a puller in, pull it out, you can heat it up. Pop it off by heating it up and a puller. You can hit the end of the crank. You can try and hit the end of the crank while prying on it a little bit. Said, all sorts of ways to get it off. One thing for sure when you're trying to get it off, make sure that your magnets are not lined up with your coil. That'll make it a whole lot harder to remove. But most of the times, a couple good cracks with a brass punch or an aluminum punch will get them broke free, just like so. And then you'll notice that right there is the key. Sometimes they're kind of stiff, but sometimes you can grab them with a pair of pliers. Sometimes you can get a little pick underneath them, get them pulled out, get them worked out. You just want to be careful. Don't stab anything into your seal. But that one's already installed. Forgot about it. But what it is it's a Woodruff key, just like this. Well, it's just a little Woodruff key like that. And it is offset. Half of it's back, half of it's forward. And what you'll do is you'll install it where you can rotate your flywheel counterclockwise. So it'll be further counterclockwise. So this is stock timing. New timing will be here. This is exaggerated, but that's just to show. And when you put it on, you'd slide it on, get it over the key, make sure it's rotated as far as it'll go, counterclockwise. That would be advancing the timing. Put the nut back on. Make sure it stays up there, all the way forward, all the way against the key. And put the nut back on, tighten it, and there you go. Your timing is now advanced. So, and if you need to back the timing off, you go the opposite way. But 99% of the time, you want to advance the timing. Now, I will say, the factory 620 coils, they don't like much, if any, advance. They start getting awful poppy on you. And if you have one advanced too much, you'll know. It'll pop like you're making a bag of popcorn. So I just want to go over that real quick. That's how I do it. So, put it on, rotate it counterclockwise, tighten everything back up. Alright, here's our results. Got 6.56 horse, which that's actually fairly close to the last 620 we did. You see this red line, pink line here. That's the stock scored up 590 run. We swapped on that very lightly ported. This is our baseline run with the This is our baseline run here with the 620 swap. This one was lightly ported, had just a touch of work. And then we machined the base a little bit and went through fully ported muffler mod timing advance. And we got a nice healthy gain right up here, 9,500, where it's going to be running. So you can see we went from a bone stock 590, 4.26 horse, and now we're up to 6.5 horse. So that's a pretty healthy jump. And I imagine a 590 cylinder. Like I said, I'm really kind of bummed that we couldn't do the 590 cylinder, but I know for a fact we can get the 590 cylinder right up there close. And using the 590 carb that's a little smaller, and the 590 coil that's not quite as good. But as you can see, they still work. They still make good power. It's right there where you're going to use it. Not overly loud. So I'd still consider this one a win. And it's not all scored up and nasty. Just wanted to share this with everyone. Alright, thanks a lot everyone.